Hello everyone. So we are in the second part of our lighting lesson. So let's look at the evening settings now. We have that is looked at, and we look at things such as outlining and light dominance. So let's look at the ceiling here. Let's just edit it a bit. It's not very direct, so let's click at Shift Light. Okay, vertex here. Oh, do we have some lighters, illuminators on? Let's try getting some strong skylight that I want to have some burns, some light over burns. Okay, that's off. Let's check what we are getting. So it's not very complex. So I want it to be a bit stronger. And I want to have um, some points, some stains, light stains on my ceiling. So let's go right like here. So let's make it a bit stronger. So let's just look at it. So now look at, let's make it a bit more. This is not enough. So the settings of the camera do matter. So let's make it a bit more. These are about the same settings as standard the default camera has. So we do have some overburns, and this is the effect I wanted to get. So we get the slot here. So we get some additional noise, but it does look overly cold. So let's turn on our lamp. So it has high parameters. Let's change it a bit. Let's go to V-Ray frame buffer and just look at this here. If it's all okay. So it's all right. 35 here. So it's not very bright, but it needs to be giving us bright kind of stains. So I want to get that color play going. So let's make the material a bit lighter. Okay, so let's get Let's get a look at the furniture now. So this is what I want to do here. So let's think if we need to highlight anything with this kind of coloring. So we need some illumination going to look at where the light is pointing at. So let's see what kind of stains we can get from this light. So I just want to make a difference between the stain and the artifacts. So let's look at the raw lighting. So it's a very, very rich color that gives contrast shadows. So it does look very nice. So during afterworks, we will be able to outline all of this correctly. So there's no point of mixing them in with the global illumination because they aren't that visible, but that they exist, these shadows. So some V-Ray sky here. You just add V-Ray sky there. So without any light or additional lights here. So let's add some V-Ray sky. So let's just add some sun. Just add it to. You can also use it. You can use it using the scheme for the lighting. So let's look at the region over here. Let's make it a rather view. Let's find out how it mixes up with the other light and turn this one on here. Let's put on some ESs. So let's make it a bit bigger and render this part here, and this is what we are getting. So the ES are rather colorful because the F number is now at a lower value. So now the camera is more sensitive to the light, and we will need to make the artificial illumination a bit lower, that is the lighters, the lamps. So all of these warm tones, they are looking very nice, very interesting. On this example, I'll be able to show you how to get a nice effect in Photoshop. So the kind of a final thing you'll be presenting. So in this kind of light with no falling shadows, with no light conflicts, you can easily select this kind of stuff, and everything seems to be harmonically outlined. So when it's done, I'm going to finally render it. It's going to be very nice. We'll look at it. Of course, some extra noise, however. So we might use some decline the sun intensity multiplier in some spaces. So so the lighting gives us a nice shadow effects. So let's look at what we can do in the Photoshop. So I've opened it here. So this is 12. Let's save it. So let's click, okay. So we've got this picture now. And these are all our images. And we need our lighting. So a noisy result will remain noisy. So, but it will show us how much we can blanker and we can make paler. We can make an image. So I've got this I got this layer 1 and the background picture, and I just used it to outline the uh, different colors of the blue illumination. So this was original, and now this that I've combined them and used them to outline it. It does look much better, much warmer. And I've got these afterburns there. Those white spots are now even more visible, and we got some deeper shadows going. So let's continue working on our interior and try working on our interior and continue looking at some more illumination. So let's use some V-Ray color here. Some just very simple V-Ray color. V-Ray color map. Just put it over here. Make it a kind of bluish feel. Put it OK here. Let's get to the V-Ray environment here. I want to only have the window lights. So let's look at what we're getting. Okay, so turn off the light here. Let's So we're obviously lacking some of this power of the light, since V-Ray color map doesn't give us much settings, like in the V-Ray sky. We have to um, we obviously see that this color here, the settings for the color is simply not enough. So let's get to this regime. Let's go to camera and change some of the expositional settings here. Set it to 250 here. And now our scene is filling in with light. It seems to be quite correct, but there are um, some uh, burns. So let's just put the number to 1 to 4. So this is an option for the lighting, for the sky lighting. So this option is nice because you can control the color easily. So you can just control everything here. You can just use the theme for work. So let's have it render a bit. Some row lighting. So let's see how the artificial illumination is going to work here. Let's look at the sky. Look at 100. So we're gonna set the parameters um, here. Okay, so when you use V-Ray color, you are going to definitely lower the parameters of artificial lighters such as a lamp because you tend to set it up a bit too much when you set it because of the physical camera settings. So you get this kind of interior here. It's just V-Ray light. So just as in the so just as here, you get this kind of skylight effect on the ceiling, and you get it's kind of a warm effect on here. So as you see, the ES isn't giving us any problems here, but um, the room itself is becomes to be quite nice. So let's just look at it from this perspective. Of this, so through this layer, you can easily outline any kind of shadow. So as you see, we have some black effects, some blacks over here, and you shouldn't be afraid of this because you always got the post work to the after work to edit it up to some stuff. So you got the second option done. We have looked at the V-Ray sky and the physical camera. And you got your own scan here. We looked at the scheme with the turned off sun, all of the options, and the variation of the turned off sun, and it looked at how the V-Ray sun and V-Ray sky affects stuff. So now let's look at the looking through it through V-Ray color. So when we use the V-Ray sun and V-Ray sky, we don't really. So when we use the V-Ray sky on the, we don't really work with the parameters to a big extent. No. Because you get an automatic kind of work done by the program. When you use V-Ray color, you don't really have the option of using so much setting for the map, and we have to use it's a lot more settings on the V-Ray camera. So here you don't have any light at all, and so you use only artificial effects of the light. So you always have to leave some of the leave some light, and some light always tends to leak in from the street. So the skylight it's always in here. So I won't suggest drastically lowering these defaults here, these settings here. So won't say that you have to turn off your color, but you can make it a bit blue because you want like here you want some of the blue to affect the scene. It's not that bad because of all you want to have here. All you want to leave because you can always change this with turning the alpha on, and here you don't have that light all that much, but there is of a bit now there was a bit of a blue kind of glow there. So we're getting some artificial lighting done. So you shouldn't be um, making it something overly white, overly yellow. You should, since you're not having any special textures, you should use something closer to white. So the colors should be slightly a mild yellowish feel to it. So they should be. When you make it yellow, you only have yellow color and only the yellow in the scene, and you get an overly yellowish thing, and it gets into a conflict because it conflicts with the textures, and some of them don't even display correctly in the discussed case. So let's make it here. So let's spread them along the scene. So let's just select it here. So I've deleted this here. Just spread it out a bit. Let's click hide all here and look at this. So let's choose some other ones over here. So let's get to project IS. Yes, and because the ones I've chosen previously are slightly overly bright. So as you see, it has a different power of light parameter going. So when you get an artificial light, the dominant light will be spreading out towards the whole scene and lighting the whole scene. And some additional lights, say ordinary lights, will give some additional tone. So you can use this option, of course, and you can play around while using the ES maps. So it's very important to find good ES colors. So you always have to have a light coming from here. That is a model there that provides us with light. So that's something you should keep in mind. So just a bit more rendering, and we'll try making a complete interior without any artificial lighters. That is non-internal lighters. So here's we got this picture. So I believe this is understandable how this light scheme works. So, in your interior, you should always pick a dominant light, and so say the main lamp gives us the dominant light and some additional highlights. Some additional lights are responsible for the highlighting, like night lamps, bed lamps, and so on would be responsible for the atmosphere. And you should never forget about the possible conflicts and the overall play responsible for the tone. So let's get this here done. So what I'll do is I won't make it black, just put it over here with 3. The ceiling will be black, and try to render it. So, look at what we are getting. 10 seems to be a bit too much, so I'll put it to 8. So, the more light it gets here, the darker it is. So, it's all dark. So, okay, this seems to be alright, and let's take a look at it. So let's see how this interior is going to be looking. Going to look. So, this problem here that we see, say we don't have any light from the window, but we want light room, you can always save it the same way. So as you see, the global lighting is very dark, a lot of dark counter reflections, and it all has a lot of blicks and stains, and has some. So we have what saves us is the ES lights, so we can make them a bit smaller. Let's do this one, 9, 305, 270 here, 700 that is. And let's see what it gets us. Let's make it a bit yellower. Here. So, as you see, the ESs seem to work, and the black doesn't seem to be horrible. But during the afterworks, we might clear up some of the areas, say these angles, and we won't see how it's going to work. So you shouldn't be making it all that dark, and you can always use the overwrite material just in order to get the global illumination going a bit nicer. And we will be able to do fine editing in the postworks. So the global illumination will be quite nice. So we can make it as dim, the interior as dim as possible. We don't really get any light from the window, as you see here. So this is, we get the shadow from the object, and the only shadows are generated by the ES objects. So be careful while making your choice. because you can get this a falsely interpreted origin of shadow. So when you have no natural light, you can use this kind of light scheme. So let's turn this lamp off. Okay, and this. Turn it off here. And another thing we'll do we'll do a bit of reflex to the walls, just for the sake of it. So just the black, as you see, you are getting additional black on the walls. So these blacks here are giving some additional blacks. I don't like the lamp because it causes more shadows than it should. So if it's a black, so if it's black, you can just pull it out to make a nice effect here, just like here. Lighting here, raw lighting, as you see, and these seems to be some of the drawing left, some of the picture left by our ES colors. So you always have to pay a lot of attention while choosing your ES file and look at it after that. So the global lighting seems to be a bit staining, but it really depends on what we've chosen. But as we see, all of the objects in a black interior look overly black. So even the dark objects in the scene are in the scene, and they get less light, and they become even darker. So we should sometimes play around with the reflections. So it's hard. It's really a problem not to avoid stain effects in dark interiors. So you have to spend some time picking maps for the lighting. So when this here is reflective, it doesn't look just straight black. It gets its stains, it gets its reflections, it gets its lights, and it gives a much more lively kind of effect. So as you see here, you get this kind of, it's one color, but you definitely get an effect caused by the ES factors. So when you make a dark interior, you should use override material a bit. There's a global illumination. And you should avoid completely black colors, because if you need to, you can always convert gray to black in the afterworks. So we looked at Viri Sky and the surrounding recon. So in artificial lights, in artificial illumination, you should use every possible illumination there is. So let's go to the next part of our lighting. Let's look at the next moment, of the atmosphere moment, and then we'll get to the VHR. So let's look at how the color can work in an interior if we don't use any portals. So let's take an ordinary lamp and put it in the interior. So let's get our ceiling into a normal house. Let's just take these and set this value to 5. So if it's a bit too much, camera, we'll just be setting them if we get an overly high effect on the settings. So you get almost the same light as you did before. So you can light your interior in any possible option, but the most physically correct one is the V-Ray Sun Sky portals. But there are different different other techniques, but they usually play the additional role. So as you see, we have some differing light, differing shadows, but they still look a bit in common. So the global illumination is quite light, quite bright, and there's not much of a difference between this and the portals. However, the difference still exists, even in the shadows and in the color. So we should honestly pay more attention to the color that we have here. You don't have to really regulate this color over here. Just regulate that. So such thing as V-Ray color, V-Ray light, and all other illuminations do not give us such an effect as we have here. So, with this kind of light, you can work with it when you have a certain particular and defined atmosphere. So, what kind of if statements do we have? So, we have a surrounding that we look at from different angles, and you always have to slightly trick your computer, I guess. 3D Max. You need to always get the effect you want, not the one that is technically correct. So you might have to make a bit of a trick. So let's turn off the portals, and let's just put in the planes, because if you look at the window, the color and the light are always a bit different. There's always several shadows pointing in different directions. This is due to reflections from the mirror, which cause additional shadows. So we don't have any breaking effects here. We don't have much of this. We can imitate this multiply directed lights through our scheme of illumination. So get this light here. I've used this light setting in my last prize-winning project. I set 3 lights behind the window, but we will have a separate some separate time to analyze it later. And depending on depending on the background, I did the ESC illumination inside. So the lights aren't going from one side, they are coming from 3 separate directions, and we're getting some complex kind of shadows. And the darkest kind of parts are where we get all of the seams, the shadows where they cross over. And you have an additional shadow here on the window. It's probably reflecting from because of the frame coming on the path of the ray. So the best thing you can do is make a good global reflection. So when you're going to be filling in your scene with details, the global illumination will allow you to have a much better kind of filling, much more realistic can it be. Because you will have problems if your global illumination isn't made at a good level. So let's turn our camera towards the window. So, say I want to be raining outside. What do I want to do? I make an arch here. It's a bit of an old school feature. When we didn't make any Photoshop a background and place a plane behind the window. Okay, just set the normals outside here and converts it into polygons. Let's go V-Ray material, V-Ray blend material here, V-Ray light over here. You'll just get to the point why I use V-Ray blend later on, and choose a map. And let's go to sky and find an interior. So let's get the fog. And let's make it raining at first. Let's make it snowy. So let's make it, it's an approximation after all. So let's turn on the realistic and look at the map. Click here and this. So click on the box and we've got displayed our map. So in the former versions of the program, we didn't have this feature working. So sometimes you had to work to a V-Ray blend and add it on later. But this seems to be working now. So let's do it this way. and start catching the light this way. So, what are we doing? It's kind of dark outside. Okay, first of all, let's render the window. Let's look at how um, how good it is. But I believe we're getting an overburn effect here. So let's just we're gonna do some camera work. Let's put in 2 and 8 here and 250 here or 50 here. So I want 1, 2 here. So I want this to pass some of the phone. So let's just look at what it's behind the window. So the phone, if it looks nice, you can render it with the picture. I don't recommend doing that because, oh, there's no alpha here. Okay, we can make it a bit brighter. So 0.5 here. So it's all alright. It's all okay. Let's just see what's happening behind the window. So we are building our atmosphere depending on the phone, and then we're using it temporarily. We are going to delete it then and edit a nicer version of it in a Photoshop when we are done creating our atmosphere. So, okay, we've got our region here and made it into 2 windows here. So let's look at our frame buffer. So let's see if we're getting enough light from the windows. So we can almost double the power of the lights. Okay, whites. So it seems alright. So we won't make it be overly strong. We want it still to be slightly bright because it's evening, not night, I believe. So we are getting some, it's not quite nice because some parts of the window are brighter than the phone. So that should be also kept in mind. But okay, this seems to be alright. So let's make it a bit brighter because I want the white stuff not to have any problems with that. Okay, this is actually alright, I believe. So what can we do? Besides having just the ordinary lights, we can have some additional ones. So we can just add some more, say here, here. So say you have a lamp light on the street light and you add a ES there. So let's just do this, get one done. or add its light, some artificial light in the particular area. So say we have one on the moon, and we'll basically get a more realistic lighting system here. So it will give us an additional shadow in our interior. So let's just look what we're getting. The background is getting better. And seems alright. So say we have a tree close to the house and it's also more visible. And this is a fairly good lighting system done. So say we get some light here, some light there. So let's imagine it's a street light kind of street light kind of illumination. So it's going to be have a warm color. We'll just put it, say it's going to be over here, or we can make them over a bit more crossover, I think. So just in order to get them into the interior, we'll make them a bit higher, and let's see if we get any warm colors done. If not, we will do some modifications here. So 20, 50 here. So let's just turn these off. You are getting some yellowish color here.
So let's make the shadows a bit more deliberate. As you see, you do get the feel that there is actually an actual light behind the window. So they seem to be nice colors. Let's just let's make this 55. So look at this again. Oh, we're getting a more deliberate effect now. Let's get it to 45, a bit less. And this seems to be. I suggest to get this. I'll just turn on the light and look at it. So, if you're not doing a commercial visualization, you can pretty much make anything you want here. You just it might be a bit fake, but if it's nice, it's good. So you can pretty much do anything for the sake of a good visualization, even putting up a soapbox. So the scheme should be alright. So we're getting a good light going. So it seems like the light behind the window, that the part of the atmosphere shown on the picture is actually true, and this kind of feel to it is our goal. And the lights from the street lights, they come kind of into the interior and give us, share the feel with us. So what creates the atmosphere is a bond between the interior and the exterior. And what we want to achieve is we want to achieve a harmony between the atmosphere of light inside and the outer lights. You can turn on. You can also always add some additional lighting to add some. So we could have made this a bit more contrast, but this seems to be quite nice. Um, besides that, um, and besides that, you can add some contrast in the post work. So I wouldn't say that I wouldn't care all that much. I'll just add additional contrast and some outlining during our post works. I'd find it a bit more convenient. So raw lighting gives us a non-colored ray kind of light, like the all other colors. And lighting the simple lighting does take the other color. However, even if we look a bit closer, we see the raw lighting does take in a bit of them colors, but not nearly as much. So let's just look at this. Okay. So let's just so here you can already do pretty much anything you like. The color corrections. I personally don't really like using this. It takes quite a while to get used to this. I don't really use this color correction. It's just you can call it a built-in editor, I guess. And you could also change this lamp here. But since it was done for the sake of an example, it seems quite alright. You could add something a bit more tasteful and a bit more atmospherical. You could also add in some additional blankets or pillows, since it's supposed to be a cold day. So what we'll do now is we'll take our arc and get this some global animation on it. And we'll turn off the visible to camera, visible to refraction. We have this here. Okay, we don't want any shadows. And we'll also take down the visible and refractions. We don't want it to be seen in the window. So what we get now is this effect here. Let's just look at this from the alpha point of view. We want to get our alpha channel first of all. So, as you see, you get the alpha channel, and in Photoshop, you don't get any picture here. We just get this kind of net. And in Photoshop, we would Photoshop in that picture. So we wanted the lights to be responsible for the atmosphere. You could use absolutely any color behind instead of that wallpaper. So in a further look. So say you've had a change, you might change the weather. You might like to change the wallpaper. So no, we don't have any. Here we don't have any additional sources of light, so we might want to delete this. Let's try making an atmosphere depending on what you see behind the window. Let's go to the array properties, choose the arc. So say we wouldn't have a window, we'd had just some transparency. We choose refraction. So it seems a bit to be a bit too bright for a rainy day, so I like this one a bit more. So let's get this. So we want to get a nicer kind of feel. We want them to be atmospherically connected. Okay, so it seems all right. We just want to see that these parts over there had the proper reflection from the picture. So let's make them. Let's change them by 2. These lighters there. Get that kind of view from the window. So we don't have much sunlight during the rain, so we're gonna minimize it a bit. So as you see, this blick there, that brightness on the edge has gotten better, and we're getting the proper mood now. And also, never forget that we have that wonderful option of clearing it up a bit in Photoshop during the afterwork. So I'll just try this here. Let's go with polygon. Convert them to polys. Let's ungroup them. No, we won't be ungrouping them. What will we do? We will open a group. Select it. I want to dechaches this part because we will need a bit more selection to extrude it. I want it only to be extruded in this plot here, in the surface, not the whole geometry. So let's take the glass, make a copy, and as in the glass material, we'll take the bitmap, choose the projects, to get the references done, go to other, okay, and we'll get the drops now. So let's find the raindrops. So just a moment, I'll just have to look for them. So I found a transparency map, so this one, and just to look at how it goes, I'll do a bit less refract. Just put this material here. So it's all right. 50, 500, 500 here. So I wouldn't like to have this here. So I picked this map for the reflection too. I'll just spend a little bit less here and get to refract and get to IOR. Let's take it to 10. Select these here and throw it to the bump. Let's get a bit of an imitation of the drops. So let's look what we are getting, at what we are getting. So seems all right, but we still need a bit of drops. So since the drops are small, we probably won't see them that much. So it seems all right here. So 2.5 here, and a bit lesser, and let's render a small part of it. So since you're going to be rendering this in a big resolution, try checking yourself on high definition pictures. So as you see, you have these little drops, but it's not exactly what we wanted to get. So let's go to materials. Let's get here. And I wanted to get a bit of displace. 2, 3. It's not giving, bump isn't giving us all that much power and intensity that I wanted to have. So displace is a bit of a more, has a bit more powerful tool. It's a bit more powerful. So now we're getting visible good drops. So seems better. So it's still not what we want. So let's go with glass. So we write material over here. Let's reflect it a bit. Refract here, 1.6 here. And take, this is the same map that we used. Okay. So the black is the upper, the other the lower. So now we're getting the material we want. So now it's rendering. So let's render set it up a bit. Okay, let's turn down the displace. Okay, displace is on. Let's just delete this here. Okay. Let's make it a bit more deliberate. Let's make it a copy. Let's make an instance. Okay. 5. So we got the reflection. Let's getting some blacks. From our light. We're gonna have to get the blacks from our light source later on, but now high selection. We need some additional editing. So I got rid of the first part of our window, and we immediately got our bump and the texture, the map. So now you can see how our reflexes work. Reflex. So what we can do is we can just take the surface, the plot, and just invert it. So when we get the view of our drops, they seem to be all right. So as a result, I get two windows with normals. So let's just set the parameters here. And 1, 2 here. So as you see, we just want a bit of bump on the drops, nothing overly complex or strong. So it's all right. So let's find the map. This map gives a strong extrude. So tiles, it's not quite what we want. But we're getting the effect of the drops on the glass. But when you look from afar, that is not all of the window is going to be covered in the drops. So looking from a distant point of view, not going into too much details, this does look quite realistic, quite nice. So rendering a bit more of the window. So it doesn't look that rainy usually. So what do we have on top? We're getting a bit of an artifact on top, and we'll have to look at what's going on there. It might be from the displays, and a couple of shadows, a couple of reflections are crossing over, and since we have IOR, this seems to be summed up into this kind of effect. So let's listen it up a bit and just check it out how it's gonna go. So we need to get rid of this now. It's probably gonna get less. Okay. So we got the water drops. So I don't really believe we need IOR for these reflections so much. So as you see, we don't have have gotten rid of this effect. Okay, so we have our we no longer have our drops. We don't see them now. So let's go to the second material, place it here, place this value.
So we get these little drops, little blicks. Say they get these drops here. So usually drops don't really stay on glass in this fashion. Usually they kind of tend to condense. So this is the way you can get your glass going. So now let's take a look at how you got your glass. Let's make and then we'll make a small pause and get to some visualizations for HDRI maps later on. So in this manner, you can also add snow and get a mask going, or so you can get a mask to do, say you got parts of the window frozen, you can get it a bit of texture, a bit of feel through bump. In some places you can get it to be see-through and get your settings going. As you see, it's not really all that strongly defined, but it has a kind of an intent to it. It's better in some places, worse in some. It really depends on the reflection, but you do have the emotion, the feel of rain on your window. And since we've been primarily talking about atmosphere, this is most important. So you get this, the correct light coming through the window into our interior, and the light does match our atmosphere. So we got as the main point, we managed to get a matching kind of light outside and a matching type of light inside. We probably could have made it a bit stronger. So when a person looks at the picture to the maximum, after he gets his first impression, he maximizes the picture, starts looking at it, starts going into the detail, and he'll be looking at this later on, and this might not affect him so much during his first expression. It will definitely affect him when he's going to be scrutinizing the whole thing. So when you're presenting something like this, you should always have some sort of legend behind. Where is it? Who's living in it? Just to describe a better atmosphere. You should get some more atmospheric glider inside, like a reading lamp, maybe a night light, anything that fits the mood. So if it's a cold day, you might want a blanket. You want things that define that atmosphere outside. So if it's cold, once again, so basically it's a mixture of primarily two lights to get the atmosphere. So I believe we'll get to the rest of the atmospheres with the HDRIs. Will be done in the next lesson, and I look forward to meeting you in our third lesson. Thank you.